let's look and see exactly what we do in regards to winterizing our drip system for our muscadines. Dean Family Acres. All right guys, so it's getting to be a little bit chilly. We've had a couple frosty nights and probably should have done this a little bit sooner, but it's been all right. I mean, it hadn't gotten really crazy cold. It got down kind of like, I think just like 31, 32 here in zone 8A. So what are we actually doing? It's time to winterize the muscadines. So hopefully you guys will follow along and see exactly what we do to make sure we're ready for winter with our muscadines. All right guys, so as you can see, we got our drip, everything's still looking good. We got a few droops here. I've got some of those twisties and I probably need to put some more on there. I don't think the droops matter. I actually caught it with just the edge of the lawnmower deck, just the way the height mine comes up. Caught one spot once and I think that stretched it out. So I'm gonna let you guys see exactly what this looks like at the end of October in zone 8A. And these are all of our Ruby Crisps that we set up on a trellis, just like Ison's and Shane from Kinfolk recommend. So let's get down to business and talk about this. All right guys, so with our Ruby Crisp, how well did they do is question number one. And as you can tell, post here, I find that very impressive. It wasn't until we had our frost the last couple nights that's died back. You can see how far it got on this end. T-post is right there. So it's within probably a foot, foot and a half. These did not do quite as well. This next one here, you can kind of see that compared to the T-post there. But when I first planted, I thought that this first one up here that I'm about to show you was just gonna go gangbusters. Just the way that it looked and everything, it just grew like crazy. If you didn't see me planting that, go check that video here, and you can see exactly which one is what. All these are Ruby Crisp. 2 were from Bottom's Nursery and 1 was from Ison's. And you'll have to go check that video out here to be able to see which one. Number 1, because I don't necessarily remember, but number 2, just because I think it's helpful for you to have an idea of where we're coming from. So this is the one vine, and you can see it does look better, but look how far we are from the end post. So we definitely did not get the growth that we thought we would. Again, looks like a really healthy plant, but it just did not take off. Probably took off maybe, let's see here, maybe about 5 foot in each direction, whereas those others took off and they were close to 10 each direction. So again, this one looked really, really strong to begin with, and for some reason those 2 down there just took off. I will say the irrigation made a lot of difference. These compared to some of our others that we planted and that we planted later that we don't have the drip set up on. Had the timer set up at the beginning of the year, or at the beginning of the season, right after I got those planted, and they did really, really well. I only watered pretty much 2 nights a week, unless it rained a lot. If it rained a lot, I really didn't worry about it. Beginning of our spring, we had a lot of rain, but then it definitely dried up. So we definitely had a good muscadine growing season. Looking forward to these Ruby Crisps hopefully producing next year, 2023. I have heard from UGA Tifton. If you haven't watched that video, we actually had 3 videos from that trip because it was just an absolute blast. You can check that out here, where we actually got to hear about different varieties, what to look out for, that kind of thing. There was a warning with Ruby Crisp in that video that they do tend to overcrop. And if you let them overcrop in that first or second year, then it takes them at least another 2, I think, to 3 years to recover from that. So you want to make sure and not let them overcrop, which means you can if you want to completely take the muscadine grapes off, you can just let the plant grow itself. I think this next year we'll probably let each plant get, you know, I don't know, 25 or so on each one, and I think that they can support that and still put on enough growth, and that's not too much for them. So just kind of thinking through that and just what options we have. So now I know that you guys don't want to hear more about muscadines, so at least in regards to the plant, because we've talked about that so much this year, or maybe you do. If you do, definitely leave a comment down below. But let's go down here and talk about exactly what we're going to do for winter now that we do have some frost. All right, guys, so hopefully you checked out episode 106 where we actually installed this drip irrigation system and how we got everything set up. I will say that later in the year we started having issues with our timer. So I've kind of just put it back in here so you can see how it would be set up, but I've actually had that removed for probably a month or 2, and I've just come out here, set a timer on my phone, come back out and turned it off. Not the best way to do it, because when I came out here to winterize everything, I realized that I had left this thing barely dripping, because I don't turn it on full blast, for a number of days. Again, nothing wrong with that. We have a good well, but it definitely will help if you have a good timer, and we're gonna have to upgrade. We've had these for about 3 or 4 years. I pulled these out of the shop when we put everything in. So let's look and see exactly what we do in regards to winterizing our drip system for our muscadines. All right, guys, step 1 is just make sure that your ball valve is completely off, depending on how you have it set up. I ended up figuring out that it will work best and I had less leaks if I actually kept that ball valve off, unless I was going to be watering a lot. I think part of that ended up being the timer going bad. So first thing is turn off your ball valve. Then after you do that, you just need to unhook it somewhere to relieve that pressure. We'll start here. So just unhook that there. Go all the way up here to where your drip line comes in and remove your pressure regulator and your timer. Now everybody will have theirs set up a little bit differently. I would recommend doing a spigot and then hooking it to. However, those actually are more expensive than buying a PVC ball valve and using some of the other accessories that I have. So what I ended up doing, originally I did have the timer here. It just, things didn't work right. We started having some issues, so I ended up with this this piece of hose. I will say you want to make sure that you use a good piece of hose. These will split or break on you and you'll end up with water everywhere if you're keeping your water on at all times. So with mine, because I have just that ball valve and then an elbow that comes up over to a brass adapter for the hose pipe threads, I'm just going to unscrew. This is a piece of Schedule 80 PVC, a riser. Some people use these for sprinkler systems as risers, but that's what I use to be able to get my water up and not have to go digging down in there every single time. So unscrew that. Next is go find your lid wherever it is. Ours happened to be sitting over in fire ants, so I had to knock that off. And what you're gonna do is just make sure you line up your little tabs there. And just close it off. Now, I'm not sure how much common sense that is for some of y'all. Some of you, I'm sure you're like, yeah, Matt, that's exactly how you do it. Others of you are like, wow, thanks for showing. So that's why we're sharing just exactly what we do. And that's what we do with the watering system. Now, let's think about this. What do we do with the muscadines themselves? You're right, we actually don't do anything at all. I will say, Isons and others strongly recommend removing these blue, can we get close enough? The blue Rain-X, because they have heard that it does produce rot from time to time. There's positives and negatives to those blue tubes. I didn't have any problems. The major complaint is that you have a lot of growth in the tube. And I had a lot of growth in the tube, but the way I set mine up, I put the zip ties, I hooked that to my drip support wire, and I turn them around backwards so that you can reuse them. That way you don't have to cut them every time. If you turn them around backwards when you put them in, then they're actually removable. They won't hold anything super tight, but they'll definitely hold something like those blue tubes. And then I was able to actually pull that up and clean and trim out a lot of the extra growth that was in the tube. So I was able to actually keep my my trunks coming up on my vines. I was actually able to keep those nice and clean. So when you do that, some people have mentioned that they have problems with rot. I'm kind of torn on exactly what to do, because I understand the rot, but I also wonder about I think they're called cotton mice. Don't quote me on that, but little mice and rats and stuff gnawing on my vine. I'm a little bit worried about that for first year. I mean, I've got a pretty good, let me see, pretty good trunk there, and they are hardened off. I just have a little worry about that. So y'all let me know. I can take those blue tubes off, it's no problem. You do have to cut the outer plastic. The inner plastic just unfolds the part that holds the support. But if you are going to think about maybe reusing those and not just throwing them in the trash, I would strongly recommend doing that. Just number one, someone else can use those. I know there was at least one guy that I just couldn't get to in time before he ended up chunking probably 100 of those. And a couple dollars a piece. I'm just way too frugal to not try and reuse or repurpose with someone. Not knocking him at all, but just saying, if you can get them to somebody, definitely try to do that. Also, if you cut that blue tube, if you actually cut it, let me see if I can get it here. You cut it right here in this seam, you can see where it's a bend in it all the way down. You can tape it. So then you could actually reuse it and you wouldn't have to worry about that. And the part on the inside definitely works. So again, unhook your drip and put any valve cover tops on just to keep that cold air out. And if you do have a main source in regards to, like I've got a fork down here at the end where water actually comes up, you can turn it off down there. The only reason I put that there is just so I could troubleshoot things, or if I had a major leak somewhere, I always had a main that I could turn off this whole side of the yard, and then I've kind of put ball valves in the different areas. Anything else that we need to cover today? I'll be honest, instead of hiding stuff, let's be honest. I've got a vine planted right here. And someone was giving me a hard time before about not planting this. This is a late fry, and I didn't plant it because I didn't have my trellis wires up. I did have my post up, but I did not have my wires up. So I did not plant it for several months after those others, and it's also not irrigated. I've got the irrigation run to the end of this this post over here. I'll show you that. So that, once I tee off or wire off where we just unhooked everything, that will allow me to be able to have drip in both places. I just hadn't set everything up on this one. So again, got the post, no hole, no wire, nothing like that. So I did measure this time because I was doing pacing before on the other side, and they're a little bit off. So honestly, some of those might be have grown 12 feet one direction and I didn't know it without getting the tape measure out there. But it's all right, it's fine. I know that one whole row is going to be Ruby Crisp. This is late fry. Got space for 2 more. Debating on what to add. I know that I want to add a Pam, and Pam is a female, so late fry and both Ruby Crisp are self-fertile, so I shouldn't have a problem there. But just from going to the Tifton trip and tasting Pam, I want to add a Pam. So I'm really thinking about adding the bronze or green varieties here on this trellis, just so I kind of keep them separate. But in all honesty, depending on what I have and what else is out here, I would strongly recommend, I've had people ask me a lot, I would strongly recommend anyone who's going to put in muscadines, just collect your materials and do it right with these trellis systems. The other ways I've done it, they'll work, but if you have the space, I mean, if you've got enough room to run 60, 90, 120 feet, something like that, I would strongly recommend it. 60, 80, I don't know what I'm talking about. Just because of it's proof right here with this drip system and how I've got it set up. I know I don't have production yet, but I will say just from straight growth, that's the ticket. If you're just gonna put them on a fence or something like that, that's fine. Put drip on them. That's the next project that I need to figure out by next spring that we'll tackle, and I'm sure we'll try and cover it. Don't have water, at least pressure water over there, so we're gonna get creative and come up with a off-grid type solution. Even though we're not off-grid, we're gonna come up with a solution for watering your plants and that kind of thing on drip in an off-grid type situation. So if you don't have pressure water or power in a particular location, we're gonna make that work over on the dog pen where we put those others in. Again, thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and ring that bell like Mike Tyson did in the 1980s. Thanks so much, and looking forward to seeing exactly how these guys start to produce and do this spring. Don't forget to check back. We're posting now. We're back to once a week just because of a couple different things, but don't forget to check back. We'll continually have different things going on here on the farm as we continue to work on different things. And I know in February we'll definitely have a pruning video on pruning muscadines. So if you are waiting specifically for muscadine content, I'd encourage you to keep coming back, because we will continually talk through different aspects, but in regards to us pruning and knowing what to do and those kinds of things, because now we've got some basically first year growth vines, and now we've got some that are basically on year 2/3. So we can kind of talk through a little bit about pruning those more mature vines and exactly what you do with that. So enough of my yapping. Thanks so much, guys. Y'all have a blessed day.